The commission. For the record, Joe Cortright. I'm an economist with Impresa Incorporated, and I'm here appearing in a personal capacity today. I don't have any particular client other than you and myself as a citizen. What my practice focuses on is studying metropolitan economies and what makes them tick and what makes them successful, and understanding how the kind of changes that are occurring today in the economy are influencing the kind of public policy decisions that we make and the opportunities to secure prosperity and have livable communities. I work with a number of clients around the country. I'm a non-resident senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. Pay a lot of attention to the kinds of policy issues that have been, I think, really underlying all your discussions today. So I'll pop up this into PowerPoint form. And I want to suggest to you that the Columbia River crossing may be one of the most important, if not the most important, investment decision and planning decision that we've made in the Portland metropolitan area for some time. And what I'd like to try to do today with my comments are just give you a framework for how you might think about that decision and how it's likely to influence the development of this region and our economic health and our well-being, and what kind of questions you might ask as you consider this in this very accelerated decision-making process that you've just observed. And I'll walk through these 8 items here. I won't enumerate them now. Just in the interest of time, I'll go through them. But I think they're all critical issues and in many ways interrelated, but I'll try and break them out. The most fundamental question in a way, and as members of the Planning Commission, I'm sure you dwell on this a lot, is what does it really mean to plan for the future of the region? And I think you have in this proposal and underlying this proposal something that looks very much like this, or the kind of thinking that looks very much like this. This was actually put together by our counterparts to the north. This is their estimates of bridge crossing traffic over the I-5 and 205 bridges since 1960. And the assumption is that trend will continue indefinitely, and we need to invest in order to accommodate it. And as long as the economy and the transportation system continue to operate the way they've always operated, that's not a bad assumption. But if the world is changing, and we know profoundly that it is, then we need to think about how we plan for a world that may be very different than just simply a linear continuation of previous trends. So, what does the Columbia River crossing say about a key measure of transportation activity? It assumes essentially a 40% increase in vehicle miles traveled in this region over the next 25 to 30 years. And that's true pretty much regardless of the alternatives that they've offered you, from the no-build to the replacement bridge to the supplemental bridge. We know that is violently at odds with stated policy of the state of Oregon and state of Washington that both say that we are going to reduce carbon emissions and therefore have to reduce vehicle miles traveled dramatically. Now, we know the world is changing, and I've alluded to that, but let me enumerate the important changes. We know that global warming is a real issue. Both Oregon and Washington have developed aggressive goals for reducing global warming, and transportation accounts for actually 50% of Oregon's CO2 emissions. So you cannot approach global warming without dealing with transportation. We also know that in the real world, in the marketplace, the financial community is beginning to take notice of this. In fact, Wall Street bond issuers have within the last 2 months said they're basically not going to fund any more coal-fired capacity, not because it isn't legal and economical today, but because they are almost certain that it will not be in the future. And the key factor from an urban transportation standpoint is what we know has happened with gasoline prices. And the sea change here is we've gone from roughly $1 or $1.25 gasoline, which has been the historical pattern through the 1990s, to now, as we all know, painfully, $3 to $3.50 a gallon gasoline. You need to ask whether the analysis that underlies the Columbia River crossing anticipates a world of $3 a gallon gasoline. I can assure you it almost certainly does not. And I also want to point out to you that that increase in gasoline prices is already having a measurable effect on travel behavior in the United States. This is the 1990 to 2000 trend shown in the red dotted line, and you can see that per capita VMT travel is actually down in the United States over the last 3 years. And that's just the short-run adjustment to gasoline prices. We know in the long run the adjustment will be even more dramatic, especially when we add policies like cap and trade or a carbon price. In fact, VMT is now 2 miles per person per day below the trend that it was at in the past. And that is manifest here in Oregon as well. We see that driving, as measured by gasoline consumption, has been going down in each of the last 4 years. So again, as you think about the future and planning for the future, think about a world not that's a linear continuation of what was happening in the 1990s when we had cheap gas, no limits on carbon, and plenty of capacity in the freeway system. Think of it in a world where people are driving less and will have to be driving less. I want to suggest to you that the models that underlie the CRC's analysis probably greatly exaggerate, in any event, the kind of congestion that we can expect. An independent analysis of this kind of model by the General Accountability Office of Congress said that those travel demand models consistently overstate demand because they fail to recognize that people change their behavior in response to congestion. And critically, anytime we use those models, we ought to know what goes into them. And the models need to be transparent to decision makers. And that's the recommendation of this group appointed by the National Academy of Engineering. It's not enough just to say that they're professional and they do a good job. They have to tell you how they put the model together and what it assumes. If you do not know what they assumed, you cannot put any credibility on the model, especially in a world that we know is changing rapidly.